So welcome to this first episode of our 2021 webinar series, and thank you very much for connecting with us from many different locations across Asia and actually beyond. Today we will discuss, as you saw on the title of this webinar, ESI, Entrepreneurship, Startups, Innovation, and how this contributes and actually shapes the post-pandemic recovery across ASEAN and East Asia. If some of you connected with us during our webinar series in 2021, you probably saw that we discussed how ASEAN micro and small medium enterprises, MSMEs, were struggling, adapting, but also in some cases seizing new opportunities in this new COVID-19 reality. And actually, for those of you interested to learn more, I think we will share some links through the chat box on what we did. And in the last episodes of 2020, we actually started talking about innovation. And since this is such an important topic, we decided to pick that up for 2021, also because we had a lot of conversation with entrepreneurs, experts, policymakers, clearly showing to all of us that somehow we need new ideas, new thinking, but also new business models and new forms of collaboration if we are serious about building back better. And we also need a better understanding about the skills that are needed in this increasingly interconnected and unpredictable world that we live in, because at the end, innovation is first of all a matter of mindsets. So we will discuss all these themes and probably much more throughout the series as we progress with the different episodes. And as we did last year, we will also develop some knowledge products based on the discussion and information that we are going to gather. And webinar participants will certainly be the first to know about what we are planning to do, what we are going to develop. But I was mentioning before ESI. There's also an E and an S in addition to the I for innovation, entrepreneurship, and startups. And this is why we decided at ERIA to partner with a Singapore-based startup for the development of the series. You will get to know TJ Oi in a minute, if you don't know him already. He's the founder of Curated Connectors, a Singapore-based startup that actually was established during the pandemic. And I would like to thank him for this partnership that continues in 2021. Let me also introduce my colleague Lina Maulidina, who together with TJ and myself will be co-hosting this webinar series. And we will see Lina later during the Q&A session. And of course, before giving the floor to TJ, who will introduce speakers more in detail, I would like to thank our fantastic speaker for today, Jonathan, Adna, Noor, Veronica, and Ravindra. Thank you so much for being with us. And let me add that we are particularly happy to start this series with a speaker also from Brunei, that is the ASEAN chair in 2021. I also want to thank Australia for their support for this webinar series. This is why you see the Australian aid logo on our flyers. And we look forward to engage with Australian innovators in the episodes to come. Finally, let me please remind you a couple of housekeeping information. Please keep your microphone on mute throughout the entire duration of the webinar. And also, yes, please remember to manage your video setting properly to avoid any background noise. But even if you're on mute, we want to have an interactive conversation. We have the chat box. Please, let's use it to share with us ideas, comments, but also questions for the speakers, as we'll get back to the questions during the Q&A towards the end. But now it's really time to start the real conversation. So I will give immediately the floor to DJ. Over to you now, and thank you all again.
Thank you very much, Julia, for the kind introductions. A big thank you to our speakers. And of course, thank you very much to all our participants who are with us this afternoon. So before we go into the conversation, let me do a quick introduction to our distinguished speakers that have joined us this afternoon. I'll start off with Mr. Jonathan Wong. Jonathan is the Chief of Technology and Innovation from the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, UNESCO. Jonathan joined the UNESCO from the UK Department for International Development, where he was the inaugural head of innovation. He has led the establishment of several high-profile innovation initiatives and has extensive experience in social innovation and entrepreneurship, impact investing, and tech for good. He also has substantial technology and innovation policy expertise, having advised governments across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. Before joining DFID, Jonathan was a founding partner of a technology and innovation venture capital fund and supported the establishment of the UK NHS Institute for Innovation and Improvement. He has also served on APEC's E-commerce Business Council and is a Rockefeller Foundation Policy Fellow, as well as a World Economic Forum Schwab Fellow. So thank you, Jonathan, for joining us. Let me move on then to our next speaker, Mr. Adna Rahman. He's the head Entrepreneurship Innovation Center from Ministry of Education in Brunei Darussalam. Adna is an ecosystem builder in entrepreneurship and innovation. In his current role, he oversees the various entrepreneurship and innovation education programs and activities being introduced to primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions. The EIC aims to produce talented and skilled students in entrepreneurship, as well as making the field a potential career path for the future. Adna was likewise involved in similar roles during his tenure with the University Brunei Darussalam. He coordinated the incubation of over 100 startups from the university since 2012. His experience also saw him actively engaged as a consultant for various government and private sector projects spanning from entrepreneurial thinking, entrepreneurship education, to SME market entry strategies, as well as community assessment of entrepreneurial perspectives. As a former lecturer, he has empowered students in the areas of entrepreneurship and new venture creation, business ethics, and corporate governance, as well as retail management. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, Adna. Our next speaker, Mr. Ravindra No, co-founder and CEO of Invest in Cambodia, as well as the founder for the ASEAN Network. Ravindra is currently the co-founder and CEO of Invest in Cambodia, which is an investment advisory firm located in Hong Kong, promoting digital tech, real estate, and impact investment opportunities in Cambodia and Southeast Asia. He also recently founded the ASEAN Network, a digital community dedicated to connecting like-minded individuals who can inspire the younger generation through speaker series, webinars, and virtual conferences. Ravindra has a keen interest in promoting Cambodia and the rest of Southeast Asia, and has been an avid community builder and voice for the region, evident from his involvements in the Cambodian Society, Pacific Basin Economic Council, as well as the ASEAN Expert Network of the World Economic Forum. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, Ravindra. Let me move on next to Ms. Veronica Loh. She is the president of the ASEAN Business Youth Business Association, Singapore. As a founding member of the ABYA, Veronica is passionate about ASEAN's growth, development, and rich culture. To that end, she envisions ABYA being the platform connecting individuals to the region. Veronica formerly held the role of Vice President and Director of Operations in Business China Youth Chapter, and is a former Academics Fellow in YSEA LI Academic Spring Fellowship on Social Entrepreneurship and Economic Development. She is the next generation, the future generation of individuals that are passionate about entrepreneurship and innovation. And not only is she active in the social entrepreneurship sector, she's also active in volunteer work as well, where she's been involved in mentoring and areas focusing on youth empowerment. So thank you, Veronica, for joining us. And our final speaker is Ms. Nora Casey. She's the CEO of Knowledge Hive International from Malaysia, a professional conference organizer and a human capital development firm. Nora Casey also manages Digital Hub International, a training and consulting firm that focuses on helping Malaysian MSMEs in their digital transformation journey. Her career started with the Malaysia Airlines System, MAS, where she developed herself and worked her way to the position of senior cabin crew. And in the process, she completed the finishing school in grooming and etiquette, hospitality, and customer service from the flagship carrier. An avid speaker, passionate trainer, and serial entrepreneur, Nora Casey believes in empowering aspiring entrepreneurs and also giving back to society. To that end, she is an active volunteer with Yayasan Raja Zarif Sofia, Negeri Johor, where she helps underprivileged school-going children with the NGO's B40 Sponsor a Child's Education program. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. That was a short introduction of our speakers. You have their names, you can check out their LinkedIn profile so that you can find out more about them and connect with them. Now, let me start with our conversation for this afternoon. Let's start with the big picture. And I'd like to just, throw the first question to Jonathan. Jonathan, you have worked on innovation and technology to solve global challenges extensively during your career. How do you think innovation and technology can help us to recover from the pandemic? What key elements do we need to consider? And what are the risks associated to technology and innovation that we may want to think about before it is too late? If you could share your thoughts, please.
Thank you, TJ. And I wish, like Veronica, I could claim to be the next generation, but I think that's passed me by now. So there we go. I can't complain. Just to let you know kind of the position I come from, essentially what I do is I advise governments on technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship policy, just so you can see where my reflections come from. And I mean, we all know this. What's certain is that the pandemic has accelerated digital transformation. And it's really highlighted the importance of technology, in particular digital technology. I think from a couple of perspectives. I mean, you look at from a social perspective. We've seen many countries in Asia, governments using digital payments to get social protection to their people most in need. We've seen governments using e-health, online education. So from a social perspective, absolutely critical that we need digital technology. And I think from an economic perspective as well, I mean, I'm sure there's many startups on the call today. Businesses that have been digitally enabled, i.e. on e-commerce, having digital finance, have fared much, much better than those that haven't. So kind of going forward, I think certainly technology innovation can help. In terms of risks, there are many risks around digital technology, but let me just highlight one. And for me, it's leaving people behind, and it's inclusivity. Everyone on this call today, on this session today, has access to the internet. Otherwise, we wouldn't be on this call. Now, imagine if you didn't during the pandemic. Your kids couldn't go to school, no access to e-health systems. How do you go about running your business? That's how important it is. And I think in a post-pandemic world, for me, the key elements for recovery would be, firstly, I think governments need to put inclusivity at the heart of digital technology policies. So to give an example, we worked in Mongolia on Mongolia's digital strategy. Most people live in the capital, but we said, look, inclusion needs to be at the heart. You need to come up with a solution to get to the nomadic communities. Otherwise, you'll start leaving people behind. So that's just an example. And certainly, I think there are two other things that I would highlight. I think one is access and affordability. People need to be able to afford the internet and have access to mobile devices, etc. So I think certainly for the private sector and governments to think about, how do you drive inclusion through access and affordability to digital technology in particular? And I think the third point I would raise is the importance of digital skills. I mentioned how important it is for government officials to have an appreciation of digital technology and have the digital skills to be able to provide e-health solutions, online education, social protection system payments to the most vulnerable. We need to really focus on that. But equally, on the business side of things, as I mentioned, businesses have fared better when they've been digital during the pandemic. I think certainly how we build digital skills within startups, within new businesses that are emerging, will be absolutely critical. And things like e-commerce, digital finance are getting more and more important, especially in a contactless world at the moment, where people are sometimes afraid to pass paper money to each other. You know, I think these are some of the really big policy agendas that we're looking to support governments on, and ones that I think will be critical if we are indeed to build back better from this pandemic and really make sure technology kind of works for society, works for the economy, and doesn't leave anyone behind. I'll stop there, TJ.
Thank you very much for your thoughts. Definitely something for all of us to think about. Let me move on then to Edna. Edna, you have been involved in encouraging entrepreneurship and innovation, both in University Brunei Darussalam, as well as now with the Ministry of Education. Can you share with us briefly what has been put in place in Brunei to foster the spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation within the education system? Over to you, Edna.
All right. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, thank you, TJ. First and foremost, I think for those of you who have been in entrepreneurship, one of the most difficult parts is how to define entrepreneurship. Because as they say, entrepreneurship can never be taught in class. So I started off as an entrepreneur, then educator, and then now going back to admin. So if there is one particular simulation that I can share with everyone here is, you will never know each and every single one's experience until you go along with them. So I first started heading entrepreneurship back in University of Brunei Darussalam back in 2014. So at that part, it was the higher education. We wanted to test how is entrepreneurship, whether the kids or the students at that time, whether they are aware of what entrepreneurship. This was 7 years ago. So we started off with the Faculty of Business. We jumped off to Faculty of Science, Faculty of Art, not just within one university, but within multi-university, because we had a national entrepreneurship agenda to see before putting entrepreneurship as a focal point. So when we look at that, we did a few bit of trial, like examples as experimentation. We found out that one thing that actually increased the sustenance or the sustainability of any startup or any incubation or any entrepreneurship is multidisciplinary. Because sometimes you always want to wonder, oh, if I come from business school, I definitely would know what a business is. To be honest with you, I have just a limited knowledge, and the humble limited knowledge. I would say that we are 50% right. Because to be honest with you, the sustainability that I can see for the past 7 years, I would see that a lot of non-business have been more active, and they know how to do that because they don't take it for granted. But the best part is when you combine them, when you have 2 or 3 disciplines. So my first opening for today, what the ministry is actually having in plan is to have a little bit of good promotion. Promotion that means entrepreneurship being exposed with the functional knowledge of sustainability when it comes with innovation. So, because to be honest, TJ, if I were to ask you, how would you be innovative today? I would actually be panicking when a kid of 10 years old were to ask me, are you innovative? But the thing is, right, to be innovative to the youngsters, to the young generation such as Veronica, they would say to be innovative means to simplify things. If I can do it in 2 minutes instead of 5, that's innovative enough. So that's actually something what the ministry has put in place. Awareness in the first beginning of primary, going up to secondary where they can experiment with a little bit of experimentation, whether they can fail or succeed. But at the higher education is where they can actually try it out, get a bit of some dollars in and out where you can lose $50 or $500, but you don't have to incur loans until you make entrepreneurship into an opportunity. To be honest with you, students that we have been incubating at the ministry, at the university, especially University of Brunei, we've actually managed to actually incubate a lot of students from multidisciplinary, and they have been sustaining even 3 to 4 years after the university. I'll stop with that at 3 minutes and 50 seconds.
You are being innovative, Adna. Thank you very much. Very good thoughts. Very good thoughts. I think we're off to a good start. I still see people coming in. Thank you for joining us. You know, we've got a very good crowd this afternoon. As it stands, we have already about 500 that are joining us for this webinar. Let me move on then to Ravindra. Ravindra, given your experience in North Asia and ASEAN, what contrast do you see between the two regions with regard to the entrepreneurship, startup, and innovation environments? The floor is yours.
Thanks, TJ, for your question, and thanks, ERIA team, for having me today with that such distinguished panel, so diverse from background, but also from age, and also good to see that very number of participants within this first webinar. So looking at my experience and giving some though within the disparities between North Asia and ASEAN, I will mainly pinpoint 5 different disparities. The first one, I think, is the cultural environment. Speaking about North Asia, I'm mentioning more China, South Korea, Japan, and Hong Kong by my experience, but the language skills is something quite significant. China is mainly driven by Mandarin. Hong Kong Cantonese is a key language. But if you look about ASEAN and the access for jobs and language skills, I think if you can speak mainly English within all ASEAN is quite the first difference between cultural environment. I think the second point, it's human capital. If you look about North Asia in kind of demographics, the median age is 44 years old. If you look about ASEAN, the median age is 32 years old. So it's much more youngest populations. So it's also explained that North Asia compared to ASEAN, the labor cost is also cheaper in ASEAN. If I give an example, within Myanmar, Vietnam, Cambodia, the minimum monthly wage is $200 compared to China, which is roughly $385. So cheaper labor cost for ASEAN. And then also because of the trade tension, many factories from China has been relocated to Vietnam and Cambodia because of this reason. So number 3, I would say it's financial capital. I think that to open your own business depends about which country you are, but there is quite a gap. If you look across North Asia and ASEAN, in China, for having a holding company, it's around $18,000 including company registration fees, compared to Cambodia, which is only $1,000 as a minimum capital requirement, and then for registration fees is $200. So this is a third disparities difference between North Asia and ASEAN. The fourth one will be more the market, the ecosystem, including entrepreneurs and customers. I think that North Asia is much more quite advanced. I think in kind of technology, digital payment, ecosystem, accelerators and incubators. If you look, and if I provide you an example about the GBA, which is quite GBA for Greater Bay Area, that is represent 11% of China GDP, including Guangdong province, Macau and Hong Kong. This is a kind of very advanced ecosystem in kind of technology, innovations, and that's mainly also a bridge between obviously China and Hong Kong, Macau, and will attract, I think, within the next decade a lot of investors from the ASEAN region. But if you look and focusing in Southeast Asia, SMEs is account for an average, I think it's around 80% of all enterprise. So looking at all the ecosystem, and again, this is my first difference between North Asia and ASEAN, the number of unicorns, it's quite a big gap between China, which is around 120 unicorns, versus ASEAN, which is represent only 10 unicorns right now. So I think that this difference is also a good point for knowledge transfer, and also to export technological expertise from Japan, South Korea to ASEAN. And finally, the last point that I want to bring, it's also the supports in kind of physical and also digital infrastructures. I think that North Asia, it's much more, again, advanced, even though that there is some quite good improvement in Southeast Asia. I think that, and also I think with FinTech, China have just launched his own CBDC, central bank digital currency. Cambodia also have launched his digital that I could mention later, but also with the Bakong project, his own digital currency. But also in Southeast Asia, I think we saw also rapid growth of e-commerce. That's who really enable business, especially SMEs. But I think that despite of this big difference between North Asia and ASEAN, I think that recently with the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, we have more, I do believe, some synergy, more than trade synergy, but of course, innovations and R&D synergies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ravindra, for sharing those viewpoints. I think it's very salient. Good for our participants to take note of. Yeah. I would like to move on to Veronica. Veronica, your LinkedIn profile tells me that entrepreneurship is very much a part of you. As president of the ABYA, perhaps you could share with us some of the initiatives that the association has rolled out to build stronger entrepreneurial ties amongst the youth in ASEAN.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure meeting everyone today, and thank you so much for having me to share more about my experiences and how we envision ABYA to be. So I can maybe probably share with you guys more about how ABYA started off. So ABYA actually started off in 2020 with 7 core team members, and we grew to a community of 80 members with members from different different ASEAN country and Singapore. So what we actually envision ABYA is that we actually came up with a bottom-up approach by conducting a focus group discussion to understand what youth hope to have in a community like ABYA. So based on what they hope to have, we actually came up with a start to end program. It's actually quite aligned to what other speakers are talking about, in a way that there's no follow-up in the programs that the youth may have. Maybe I can share a bit more about how Singapore context is like. So in Singapore itself, if you represent the country to go for any ASEAN-related program, usually the most you can actually do is writing a report after the program, but there isn't much of a follow-up or community where you can actually know more about the ASEAN region. Thus, ABY hope to actually cover this gap by actually allowing a community not just in Singapore, but in other ASEAN region to know more about ASEAN by creating a program that focuses on 3 main pillars such as business, culture, and the way to understand more about the historical side and political side of the country itself. So we do actually have different programs, and you can actually check out on our website on what we have. So the main focus of such program, right, is actually to understand about what each country has, because in a way that ASEAN is very unique, but we also have some similarity on why is it that we are working very well together with each other. So we actually help the youth to actually learn more about the country, and also allowing like cross-cultural learning. So as long as you have a laptop and internet, you can always join our program, and it's actually free because the objective of having so is aligned to what Jonathan has shared earlier, in a way that we want to be inclusive, to not restrict anyone from learning more, especially in a country like ASEAN where it's growing and projected to be the 3rd largest economy by 2030. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Many people here have got internet connection,
Yeah.
so you may need to expand your bandwidth after this particular session.
Yeah,
because
sure.
your membership increase.
Yes.
For the first round, last but not least, Nora Casey, as a fellow entrepreneur, we often have to step out of our comfort zones. And I think 2020 has been a classic case study of that. From your own experience in Malaysia, could you share with us some of the key lessons learned in your journey that could perhaps benefit the entrepreneurs that are in our midst, as well as the policymakers, as we begin to look beyond the pandemic? Yeah, if you could share your thoughts, please.
Yeah, thank you, TJ, ERIA, distinguished speakers, and the audience today for having me on this platform. All right, Knowledge Hive International, we actually started as a professional conference organizer. Yeah, we actually wanted to do niche conferences like AMLA, Anti-Money Laundering Act and all. Yeah, but during the pandemic, we actually had to pivot. We have to pivot from doing conference to learning and development. So I actually started my journey as a trainer in 2009 while I was still flying with Malaysia Airlines. Yeah, when I left in 2015, when Malaysia Airlines downsized, I told myself, what am I supposed to do now? There's plenty of trainers outside there in Malaysia, but how can I be different? So I started out with this idea of doing something totally different so I can disrupt the market. Yeah. So when I started with human capital development, we actually thought like, why not we start? I didn't want to do soft skills because I think we can generally get it online to learn about soft skills. So I actually plunged into innovation. So we actually started doing big data and all of that. But during this pandemic, everyone had to work from home. In Malaysia, I think we had this lockdown for the past 3 months. So I told myself, how is my trainer supposed to reach my audience or my clients? So we had free webinars. And we blasted out to the Malaysian community, the corporates and the governments, for them to just listen in about the trainers and what they can offer. So that is how I myself as an entrepreneur pivoted. Because to me, it's if you keep yourself idle and think, what am I supposed to do? Nothing will be done. So you have to move on. You have to see that opportunity and you need to seize it. That is very, very important. See the opportunity, seize it, and move forward. I think in Chinese, TJ, there is always a saying about crisis. You either see it as a fear or opportunity, correct, TJ? Yeah, so that is what I did. As in Knowledge Hive International, we actually have a very lean team, only 7 of us, but 7 great minds. Yeah, because I have been a cabin crew for the past 23 years. So when I plunged out and started my own, I told myself I need to have good team on board. So that is what we actually did. Pivoted, and you must understand the current market needs and collaboration partners. Collaborating with correct partners at the right time is the best way moving forward. Yeah, so that is how I actually pivoted. And I think most of the Malaysian companies here also, we actually didn't had the opportunity of working from home previously. So now there is a part of us that still some of us do not understand how to use the technology, but they are slowly learning. This is where we actually come out with trainings on how we're supposed to stay alert on Zoom and all. So yeah, the market is very, very huge for this innovation, and they need to understand, they need to move forward. We cannot stay at the same place. Everything else is revolving. Yeah, everything. We even have digital banking now. We can get a device and go to the underbanked and get them registered. So yeah, everything is moving, and we ourselves have to keep abreast with what is happening around us. Thank you, TJ.
Thank you. If you just stay online, because I will continue with you, but spoken like a true trainer, developer, entrepreneur, you know, at this point, I think really it's very important to be saying that yes, we need to be constantly acting as we see the opportunities. I believe the word that you were talking about was weighty. Yeah, that in the face of perceived danger or challenges, that you can still find opportunities. Uh, seize it. So Nora Casey, along those lines, then as you begin to look to the future beyond the pandemic, um, what attributes then do you feel will be critical for entrepreneurs to embrace besides what you've shared? Are there more things that can be done um, amongst the entrepreneurs as well as perhaps in the larger ecosystem to further strengthen this whole spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation in Malaysia and perhaps even beyond that? Yeah, if you could share your thoughts, please.
All right, TJ, because previously I have worked with a company. It is my friend's company, and they actually run conferences which is touching on innovation. And I myself, as a manager there, we actually curated and actually run the biggest Malaysia Tech Week, which has been running in Malaysia in 2019, yeah, for a week. Yeah, so I think entrepreneurs need to attend seminars like this, and the collaborative partners, they need to go and upskill themselves with. We have innovation centers in Malaysia, like MDEC, Malaysian Digital Economic Corporation, is the biggest innovation centers, and they are giving out free training to actually upgrade themselves. Yeah, because if you don't seize this opportunity, you actually do not take it, you cannot move forward. Everything after this is going to be IR 4.0. Yeah, because you need to learn, unlearn, and relearn that whole process. Yeah, so innovation centers, attending conferences like Malaysia Tech Week. There is plenty of conferences in Malaysia, even in Singapore. I believe there is a very large scale conference, right? So then join platforms with MDEC, Magic. They have great training platform there. If you cannot get access of paying, right? Just go on these platforms and learn, because I think if you do not learn, because it is evolving so much, because even for me, as a business owner, when my staff sometimes tells me something and I go like, oh, really? So I actually do not know that thing actually exists, you see. So which is good, because I get young innovative stuff telling me, Miss Nor, this can be done. Then I tell them, okay, let's do it. So I think yeah, you have to grow though. I think forget about it's very difficult. If I say forget about soft skills, a lot of people are going to get angry. But soft skills, you can acquire them. But this innovation thing, you really need to understand. Yeah, we are talking about a lot of things. Like recently, I was just today checking up my WhatsApp, and there is a thing going on WhatsApp. If you clicked on it, they can capture all your data. You know, so you need to understand, like, hey, cyber security, you know, on your phone, what are you supposed to learn? So you need to know introduction to cyber security, you know, you need to know a lot of things about this. No, miss, yeah, this world, the more technology they have, I think they have actually invaded some of our privacy, for me to put it. I don't know the other speakers will actually agree with me or not. Yeah, because they can invade your privacy. So you need to be 10 steps smarter to understand what is happening. You need to keep yourself abreast with the latest technology. Yes,
Fully
TJ?
agree. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I believe, and I agree with you as well, that we cannot remain status quo. There's a need to continue. I like the word that you use, upskilling. Because we are the young generation. There's a younger generation that I'll talk to in a while you know, but we are the young generation. We need to continue to upskill, to be relevant. Yeah, because the whole thing and the premise of entrepreneurship or startups, of the innovation ecosystem, is that there is a continued evolution. So thank you very much for sharing. Ravindra, I would like to look to you next. You know, for Ravindra, when we look at post-pandemic recovery, just to zoom in a bit into what you shared, what more do you think needs to be done so that we can ensure the continued growth and vibrancy of this ESI ecosystems in our region? Perhaps if you could share on a broader ASEAN perspective, and then zoom in on Cambodia. If you could share your thoughts, please, Ravindra.
Thanks, TG, for your question. Before I share this thought, I just want to underline two numbers from the ASEAN Secretariat. First, 30% of the world top startups ecosystem are now in Southeast Asia, 30%. And then the second one is also a very relevant number, is SMEs contribute to almost 60% of the gross domestic product in ASEAN. So it shows how important is that ecosystem, and mainly SMEs as the backbones of ASEAN. So answering your question now, how can we really figure out how we can post-pandemic implement some key action? I can share with you a few of them. The first, I think that because I think to be realistic, I think this pandemic will probably will be there probably for until I think 2021, until the end of the year. I think that we have good progress right now with the implementation of the vaccine, but I think that government should provide, I think, long-term support to SMEs. I see in Philippines there is one called CRED Act, which is a corporate recovery and tax incentive for enterprise, which really, I think, balance in relief and it's a kind of stimulus. In Indonesia also, we have some fiscal and non-fiscal stimulus package. So this is the number one, is to really provide long-term support to MSMEs. I think the second one, we should also, I think, focusing on ESG, which I mean by that, I think that the ASEAN comprehensive framework, I think it has been adopted on the 37 ASEAN Summit, which really promotes sustainability and resilience within ASEAN, mainly within these three pillars under ESG. First pillar is renewable energy. Second one is digital transformation, and I think this is a big topic that we can discuss later on. And the third one is green infrastructure. More than that, also we can also think and try to understand how we can also improve gender equality, because especially in science, technology, engineering and mathematics STEM, this STEM department, I think we find mainly a predominance of male versus woman. And I think this gap is quite dominant within the jobs, but not only within that specific department, but also in leadership positions. So how we can improve gender equality in ASEAN. This is the third one. The fourth, I think, is how we can support youth through program trainings, especially in that new era of digital transformations. And especially also knowing that ASEAN, it's a young and tech-savvy populations who are really receptive to innovation and technologies. So more than skill, we obviously need to reskills to compete and be flexible within that digital economy era. Then the last one for ASEAN, I think that it's also ready to strengthen innovation within that ASEAN ecosystem. Post-pandemic means that all stakeholders from government, policymakers, business sectors, entrepreneurs, startups, even scholars and universities need to really bring people together to think about data policy, digital skills, and cyber security, which will be a very one of the threats, I think, for not only ASEAN but on the global scale. If I dig in with Cambodia, the government has been quite supportive, launching different program, financial support, but also some program like SME Bank in April 2020 to expand MSC access to finance and also develop a credit guarantee scheme for SMEs. And also many partnership has been done recently with UNDP, who support startup through entrepreneurship training as well, with incubation program, but also accelerator programs, really promote and prevail the best startups from across Cambodia. So that's, and also last, if I can give you another example with the Bakong project, with that our first digital blockchain technology, which really promote more than inclusion, financial inclusions, that also is a cashless program. So mainly within that situation, I think it's something very beneficial for Cambodia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ravindra. Thank you so much. I'd like to move on to Edna next. You know, I think as what Ravindra has been sharing as well, you know, many governments in the region and beyond, you know, they've actually been pivoting a lot of plans towards post-pandemic recovery. So perhaps from the perspective of Brunei, especially for your ministry, you know, could you share some of the initiatives that the ministry has embarked on, or perhaps will be kickstarting to ensure that, you know, these ecosystems, entrepreneurship, startups, innovation, they remain vibrant and can thrive in a post-pandemic era?
All right, thank you, TJ. The question is a little bit, to be honest, I would need at least 2 hours for this, but since I have 5 minutes now, how to begin? You know, when we try to promote entrepreneurship, it's not just to actually create entrepreneurs. We want the students to become entrepreneurial. In other words, we want them to have entrepreneurial mindset. For that to happen, the students must be able to make sense. Like what they learn is actually applicable in their daily life. If I were to learn about business, example, how to market a certain product, so when I go out after school hours, I can actually help my father or mother or uncle in terms of marketing the product when it comes to the shop outside. That is for the purpose of making money. But at the same time, the purpose of entrepreneurship is also to produce entrepreneurial mindsets. We want the student to actually make sense in terms of, oh, I am actually studying science and history, and also, let's say, Bahasa Melayu. But how do I become entrepreneurial? How do I make money out of learning all this? To be honest with you, you don't have to make money at every single time, especially when you're in the phase of education. You only know how to make sure that you love learning, you love education, and out of feeling that you love how to actually make sure that all this is happening under the roof of education before you even go out to the phase of employability. So answering what you have, what the ministry is actually preparing now is to make sure that we have the easy fundamentals so that our kids, our future youths for the next 10 to 15 years, they can feel, they can know, they can test that, oh, I want to be somebody, an entrepreneur. Because to be honest with you, it's seldom we heard when people say, I want to be, people always say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be, those high profession, those are all good. But seldom we heard when students are saying, I want to be an entrepreneur who's actually good in terms of food and beverage. Seldom, because they don't consider that as a profession. But thank you to the government's effort all the way around the world that has acknowledged entrepreneurship as a discipline. So technically what we have to do at the ministry side is to create awareness, to make sure that IR 4.0, Industry Revolution 4.0, is also part of that. So in whatever things, the syllabus and the syllabus that they learn in school are actually practical and pragmatic. So that's the difficult part, because we do not know how easy and difficult things, because if I go to a class, imagine a scenario, I go to a class in the school and I go and talk about entrepreneurship, people will say, oh, I know business because I'm a shopper, but have you asked the student? But I haven't been a seller. I don't know how much to price this product. So technically, there's a big gap between being a seller and being a buyer. But at the end of the day, one thing that I forgot to mention, entrepreneurship under Ministry of Education is not actually placed under a curriculum department. We are actually standing on our own. That's why entrepreneurship is actually combined with innovation, because to us, innovation is actually the key sustainability that would allow entrepreneurship to actually grow and sustain itself from one to another within the different discipline. There's a lot for me to say, to be honest with you, but 5 minutes is all I have. We'll go for Q&A. Back to you, TJ.
Thanks, Adna. We will find the remaining 1 hour, 55 minutes in a few perhaps other opportunities. Yeah, to give you that full spectrum of sharing. But thank you for those thoughts. If I were to then move on to a bigger regional platform, back to you, Jonathan. You're working on these issues at UNESCO. Perhaps if you could share with us, some of the key initiatives that you are developing to help countries in the APEC region with innovative solutions for the post-pandemic era.
Sure. I mean, I spoke a lot about technology earlier, but let me now focus on entrepreneurship as well. I mean, this is my personal view, not the UN's, although I think they would share it, so I'll be okay. I think the biggest innovation for me is if the economy could work better for society. It really does. I think you look at the region, business has been a source of economic dynamism, innovation, technology in this region. It's put money in people's pockets, it's created jobs. Arguably, it's created quite a lot of social inequality. Arguably, not arguably, there's been huge environmental degradation. And certainly, I think that's the biggest innovation for me, economy working better for society and environment. Now touching on the topic of how we support governments, I work a lot with governments on social entrepreneurship policy. And I truly, in my heart, believe in this for a number of reasons. Take a look at the pandemic. I thought it was really interesting that there seemed to be this trade-off between economic objective and social objective. So you lock down, there's a social impact, people stay healthy, hurts the economy. You open up, economy gets better, people get ill. And I was kind of thinking about this, and I thought, actually, social entrepreneurship actually comes together. It's not a conflict. Social entrepreneurs are looking to solve social and environmental challenges using business means. There is an economic and social dimension there. And for me, at the heart of building back better from the pandemic is that we need an economy that works better for society, as I mentioned. And for me, social entrepreneurs are absolutely at the center of that conversation. And I'll add to that as well. And Veronica's a case in point. You mentioned that there's a next generation of entrepreneurs. I mean, I went to business school. You know what I learned? They taught me how to make money. They taught me how to start a business. But they didn't talk to me about social impact and social challenges. But I think now we're seeing the next generation of entrepreneurs who actually want to make money, absolutely fine, but actually want to do good in the world as well. And certainly we're seeing that, governments are seeing that, and governments are putting in place the right policies. So to give a few examples, I'm based in Thailand, in Bangkok. I work with the government on the Social Enterprise Act. Now this is an act that if you pass the criteria that you're a social enterprise, you get specific tax incentives, specific access to training and etc., and different provisions and support than you would as a normal business. You look at Indonesia, where I work with the government on integrating social entrepreneurship as a key pillar within their national development plan. You look in Pakistan, where there really is a huge wave of young entrepreneurs looking to do well and do good, where we helped to establish a Center for Social Entrepreneurship in Pakistan. One of the first governments in the world, I think, to actually have a social entrepreneurship focus, because they saw it too. They said, okay, we believe that business can do good for the economy, but it also can do good for society, and we need to support that. So for me, that really is an important point. And I think social entrepreneurship as a concept, we've seen growing in Asia, and we'd like more countries to take it on board as well and deliver those policies so that it can grow beyond national boundaries. I'd love to see social entrepreneurs providing clean water to poor communities in Pakistan, doing the same thing in Laos, or vice versa. I mean, this is my dream in my mind, which I don't think is too far from reality, because I do have a lot of faith in that. The entrepreneurs that are in the world today are very different from my time. You know what I mean? That they've got a different mindset, a different social conscience, and this is what governments need to back and support. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Great sharing. Before I move on to our aspiring social entrepreneur, just a quick sound out to our participants. It's still not too late to post any questions that you may have onto the chat box. It's already bursting with quite a number of questions, but I think we welcome more. And also, if you have questions to ask any of our speakers or even all of them, feel free to write it in to the chat box. Okay, now to wrap up the discussion and the whole interesting conversation we've had for the past 1 hour, I bring the floor back to Veronica. As you look to the near future, post-pandemic or even beyond, perhaps could you share some thoughts about what the younger aspiring entrepreneurs, I say younger because in my vocabulary, there's young, which are many of us around here, and there are younger, which would be you. I don't believe in old people. It could be denial, but I don't believe in old people. It's just young and younger.
TJ, can I say young at heart? Let's use that word.
Sure. Yeah, the young at heart. Yeah. What do the younger aspiring entrepreneurs? What have they set their sights on? And perhaps in your interaction as well, what do you feel the next generation needs to have in order to strive? So the floor is yours, Veronica.
Thank you so much for your question and also for allowing me to share more about my experiences. So in ABY itself, we actually do have some aspiring entrepreneurs, and what they hope to strive towards is that mostly they are interested in social entrepreneurship, like what Jonathan has mentioned, and also in the tech startup and e-commerce, and even as working in SME so that they can gain experiences. I feel that personally is more of about knowing the purpose in your life, knowing what really drives you as a person. It's okay to be a social entrepreneur and it's okay to be an entrepreneur. By the end of the day, it's really about what really drives you as a person. When you're doing this thing, why are you doing it? So maybe probably if I relate it back to ABY itself, we are actually hoping to be a social enterprise in the future where we are able to balance both social and business lead. So the social impact is more about how we are able to deliver to the society. So our target group would be more about the ASEAN youth. So for the business part, it's more about providing services to the enterprises or even corporate. So the main objective for sharing this is more about sharing about you need to know your purpose in your life and also about the drive that you have. So for example, in ABYA, we strive to be able to actually empower the next generation of youth to be future leaders in the ASEAN region. And this is what we aim to have. And by knowing that, we are able to work towards it. And maybe probably I can share more about my personal experiences about why ASEAN is actually important. So based on the interaction that we have and in terms of the government objective and all, we can really see that in this post-pandemic situation, it's very important for us to work together instead of against each other. If you look at the news, there's always a lot of political issue, even for COVID, can't even stop political issue that's happening right now. So that's why it's important for us to come together as one to really drive towards that goal. And I would say that probably it's more about by knowing the purpose in your life, then you are able to know the goal towards it. And it's always important to actually have the top 3 goals. Everyone has 24 hours, and it's important to actually prioritize the top 3 goals in your life, and then you can try towards it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Veronica. If I may add this point, I think you know, for you as the younger generation, you can take heart knowing that you know you have the young at heart that are there and ready to really share what we have, to share the experiences that we have to all of you. Yeah, I think I can say on behalf of even my panel of speakers, you know, because I hear so much passion coming from them, and they are sharing, you know, regardless of the backgrounds, the countries they are from. Yeah, so you know, I think many of us perhaps are looking forward to exploring even, you know, future opportunities of collaboration with the ABYA and similar organizations as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, you know, to our speakers. I think it's been a very, I would say, inspiring. It's been very interesting conversations we've had. I know Lena is ready because we've had many questions that have, you know, just been bumped into the chat box. So for the remaining period, and I'll pass the floor over to Lena, that will just help us with the Q&A session. Over to you, Lena.
Thank you, TJ, for handing the floor to me, and thank you to all of the speakers who has a youth spirit at heart and at age to share their perspective and make it this discussion even more interesting. So this noon we have more than 100 of participants and has asked many interesting questions. But before that, I would like to share my opinion itself. I mean, I understand that youth sometimes, from the youth perspective, youth sometimes are feared to becoming entrepreneurs and go out of the comfort zones because we are seeing many barriers such as limited of access to finance or limited of knowledge. So but this pandemic, there's always a new opportunities and silver lining over the difficulties itself. So I believe if we can be agile and see the opportunities, we can thrive and succeed in the post-pandemic recovery. So the keyword is to thrive and see the opportunity and become adaptable. So I would like, from the questions and the chat box, we have seen questions to see your perspective. How do you think we can learn to be more adaptable and see new opportunities? So perhaps to all of the speakers, I would like to give the floor first to Mr. Ravindra. Over to you, Mr. Ravindra.
Thanks, Lina, and to prevail this question. So you asked me how to be more flexible in that time of crisis, how entrepreneur should be more flexible. So I think that more than flexibility, I think that agility, adaptations are really important. I think especially during that time of crisis, and because no one really know the end. When travel will be again back to normal, the consequence of the new variant from UK and everything. So I think that flexibility, but also patience, can also be added to this flexibility skills that entrepreneur during that time of crisis may have.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ravindra. Maybe from the entrepreneur side, Ms. Nora Casey, how do you think we can be more agile and seize the opportunity as well as handle the risk whenever you are dealing with your startup company? Maybe sharing a tips on that?
All right. We're talking about risk. You say, how can you handle the risk when you are an entrepreneur?
Sure.
Let me tell you guys, being an entrepreneur, there is a risk. There is a risk. I will not sugarcoat it. There is a risk. But you have to understand the risk, do your due diligence, and move forward. Simple. Like I said, you need to collaborate. Don't be shy to go and LinkedIn and see if you see an opportunity. Send a message to the person to actually meet up for coffee first. Then you can open your small chat on how both of you can collaborate together. So being an entrepreneur, remember, there's always risk, but you have to, when I do this entrepreneurial training to most of the entrepreneurs, right? I always tell them, where risk is like a bull charging at you. But what you need to do is hold the bull by the horns and break it. So when you do that, you are actually going beyond. You are actually breaking the barrier. Never stop doing that, because it's not an easy journey, but it can be done. A good collaborative partner. Like I always say earlier, also the upskilling, it is important. Even myself, I'm reaching 50 now, 50 young. And I am also learning a lot. Every day I'm learning a lot. And it's a journey, but the most important thing is never give up. As an entrepreneur, if you give up, you have failed. For me, is have plan A, work towards it. If the plan doesn't work, change the plan, pivot, but never abandon the plan. That is most important. Never abandon the plan. Yeah, that's from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Noor. Very interesting tips to never give up to become an entrepreneur. So maybe I would like to seek an opinion to Mr. Adna, because previously Ms. Noor kept mentioning youth at heart, and then how to what is your perspective to be more adaptable and advocate more awareness for youth and continuations of policy support to narrow the gap between entrepreneurships and startups and also youth? Over to you, Mr. Adna. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Lina. To be very honest with you, there's no easy way other than to try it on, because when a student, when they are at the phase of education, when they learn or wanting to learn what a startup is, they have to try it on something. They want to try a business which is selling food, selling retail, technology, whatever it is, they have to try it out. But the thing is, right, what we normally advise is to start with something that you already have a bit of experience with, so that the rate of failure does not actually have to go down that particular deep steep. So what we do is we normally call it a smart experimentation approach. So we see what we have. We see that in terms of visible assets, this is what we have. In terms of skills, this is what we have. Let's not talk much about money. This is what I have. What possible subjects, what possible businesses that I can do, combining these two tangible or intangible products. Having a lot of ideas, 2, 3 to 4, then you actually come up with the idea of, oh, if I choose this business, what could go wrong? Anticipate, just anticipate. Because at the end of the day, your friends will actually, at the end of the day, will tell you, oh, I tried that. This is what happened to me. So you gain that particular experience. So at the end of the day, when you have that particular idea in terms of what could happen, then you try it out, what we call a pilot. So instead of like you opening and renting out a restaurant right after education, you actually set up the business somewhere in a restaurant by having businesses with friends or family's friends, and just try it out. Try to see how it can feel. So you're minimizing all the risk. So all these things is actually a method called experimentation. If you would love, because everyone is actually afraid of fear. A failure at the beginning is actually a very damaging one. You don't want to fail at your first attempt, because there's only 1% or less, way less than that, of people who actually succeed at their first try. There was a question just now that was actually saying that, look, do I actually, what kind of business should I actually start in this particular post-COVID pandemic? To be honest with you, start with something that you're comfortable. Try it out. The business will change, as Nora Casey actually really pointed it out. Do not give up, but do not also do it rashfully. Thank you.
Thank you. A very interesting tips. So never give up. And maybe same questions to be addressed to Mr. Jonathan, if I may. So in your perspective, how to be adaptable, and then as from the policy support, how to advocate and create an awareness to narrow the gap between entrepreneur, youth, and startup itself. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Jonathan.
Yeah, you're probably asking the wrong person here. I'm not an entrepreneur, but I mean, what I've always, but I get excited by entrepreneurs' ideas. That's my passion. What I was quite good at was raising money. So I'd like kind of hang out with these young entrepreneurs and startups who are doing really interesting things and just help how I could, you know, kind of raising finance, business planning, all that sort of thing. Because that's what made me excited. I never had the good idea, but I really got inspired of people who had good ideas. And just on that point, I would agree with no. I think collaboration is key. The conversations that you have with interesting people can spark your ideas and send you off in a completely different direction. And I think certainly that your networks are really important around that. And if I hadn't, I look at some of the biggest achievements I've had in my career have all been started by a conversation with somebody, you know, who saw a problem that I was trying to solve from a different perspective, who had a different skill set or a mindset to what I had, who maybe had a different vision than what I had, and could challenge what I was thinking, or indeed complement what I was thinking as well. So yeah, just to say, I think in terms of how do you keep your mind open to new opportunities, just keep talking to people who interest you, but people actually who don't interest you as well, because you never know, something interesting may happen. So yeah, that's just my kind of non-entrepreneur perspective on that question, shall we say.
Okay, thank you. Still very interesting to hear your perspective. And maybe to Veronica, as the youth, we are the youth. So how do you think we can keep being adaptable and see the opportunities?
I see. Thanks for asking me this question. I think it's important to have an open mindset. So whoever that you meet, right, always remember that you can at least learn one thing from the conversation itself. By doing so, you can actually remember that you can learn many things. So for example, if you have 80 peers in your class, right, you can learn 80 pointers from these 80 peers. So by having an open mindset, you are then to actually absorb and to be able to adapt to different situations. So for everything that you do, right, always know that you can learn something, and this can actually help you to be able to adapt to different type of personality of human beings. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the next, we have a question about the role of government, academy, and the industry in building entrepreneurs. So maybe this question would be best to be answered by Mr. Jonathan. So I hope.
I was going to say Adna.
First?
But I'm happy to go
Adna.
first. But yeah, I'd be interested what Adna says on this actually.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, Mr. Jonathan.
It's interesting. I wrote a blog. It must have been about 6 months ago, around technology parks, technology innovation parks, and the opening line was, technology parks, establishing technology parks are not a walk in the park, essentially. And we did some analysis of how successful some of these big tech hubs were trying to recreate Silicon Valley. They weren't so successful, you know, many of them. And these places cost a lot of money sometimes. You know, you're dealing with infrastructure, you're buying land, you're building laboratories, you're building buildings and all that sort of. It's expensive. And my reflection on this is that I actually think innovation happens in different places. I think the point I would like to make. And although the theory says, and it still does happen, and Silicon Valley is always the one that they highlight, this close interaction between business, academia, startups, etc., really creates some unicorns. But certainly when I look at different parts of the world, innovation happens in different ways. I look in India, where I've done a lot of work, and the grassroots innovation movement is big. You know, there are young people who cannot read or write, who need to innovate just to survive. You know, I met a guy who developed a clay fridge to keep his food cold because he had no electricity. And then this product then sold all across India. You know, these sorts of things. So whilst I do think that kind of triple helix, as they call it in the theory of business, academia, and startups is important, it needs to be complemented by, in this new world, that the fact that innovation happens in different places. And especially during the pandemic, innovation will happen on calls like this. You know, when you're having a conversation with somebody who you may not have met before, or and devising ideas. So I think the new world has to reflect that, and look beyond kind of that industry or academia perspective, and taking into account people in their garages or incubators or startup hubs or impact hubs. The ideas come from there as well.
Okay, thank you for sharing your thought. I'm sorry to address to you because Mr. Adna had to leave early for family matters. So
he would have given a better answer than me, I think.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. And maybe the next questions would be addressed again to Ms. Nora Casey about, as the entrepreneurs itself, what are your thoughts on technology incubator centers to nurture the ground of startup?
Oh, I think startups need to go to these centers. They need to enroll themselves. Like earlier, I did mention about MDEC. Even Magic is an incubator, all right? And MDEC, they need to go there because there are experts there who can guide them. You know, to be an entrepreneur is something, but being an entrepreneur which is guided is a different thing. You see, I am an entrepreneur and I just went straight to the wall, hit myself, and learned in a very hard way. But I believe that the best thing is to go and join these centers, yeah, because they have their experts there that can guide you, not only in your entrepreneurial journey, but motivate you. Because as an entrepreneur, there is times where you actually feel you do not have to drive anymore, or you're just too tired, or you don't believe in yourself because of certain aspects that happen, yeah. But there they will keep you focused. They will try to, you see, you will learn a lot from there. You can churn ideas from the experts there, and the training they give you about financial planning. Being an entrepreneur is something, but if your financial planning is very important, because like myself, I am self-funded. So whatever I do, I had to really think that, do I actually need this? Do I actually need extra staff to actually do this? Or do I need to take part-timers, you know? So they will teach you a lot of things about, do you need certain things? Because certain times we just need it because everyone is having it. But at times as an entrepreneur, you need to understand, is it really important to have that? So joining these incubators, it is, for me, a thumbs up. You need to go there if you want to be a champion entrepreneur, because then they will actually bring you to different platforms. You see, you know, if you are alone by yourself, then you are just going on LinkedIn looking for the right collaborative partners. But if you are under their umbrella, whenever there is an innovation program going around the world, they will actually bring you along, and you can learn a lot. Like you earlier said also, I think Jonathan also mentions that you will learn a lot during these sessions. And I, like Jonathan mentioned just now about India. Yes, I saw a documentary on India. Yes, they are very innovative, yeah. And to me, innovation is, if I use the word think outside of the box, everyone is using it. So I don't know, is that a correct word? Or I just say like, you need to think that around your environment, what can you do to make it better, especially the social enterprises, what can I do to make it better? Or like even Adna said earlier, like having an idea and then you bounce on the idea as a pilot project. To me, one thing I learned even myself as a human capital development company, I have actually invested into farming. To be honest, I've invested into farming because I told myself, because during COVID, what is important? Food. So investing into farming is the best way to go. So I have invested into farming. So yeah, you need to have a business, grow it, invest in the right channels. Yeah, as entrepreneurs, I think that's the best advice I can give you. Thank you.
Sure. Maybe to Mr. Ravindra, because you
just
have...
Exactly. I just, sorry to cut you. I just want to add to Nur and Jonathan discussion. I think that you know, when you're working from a startup and you really you are in the right, I think, environment, because it provides you tools, but also, as Jonathan mentioned, this is very important, access to network. And I think that, you know, more than LinkedIn, of course, we can connect each other. I think that we're living, I think, I think it's a very interesting time that through that technology, we can connect very easily, you know, from different parts of the world. But I think that it's also accelerates the power of network, not only for potential leads, but also perhaps for seeking investors. And I do believe that more than that tools, that network, it's very important as an entrepreneur to have the right mindset and positivity and resilience. Positive mindset and resilience are very, very important, because I think for me, I'm reading a lot of kind of, you know, positive psychology videos and you know, mindset motivational videos. And I think that the right journey of a successful entrepreneur is to fail at least once. You know, I think that I don't believe that there is few of them, I cannot tell, but the first idea or business will be successful. I think that when I share and I meet all that entrepreneurs, they have all failed at least once.
Thank you so much for your perspective. Veronica, maybe you would like to have some thought on the incubation centers for nurturing the startups?
Oh, I think it's really good. That's how ABYA grow, you see. So we are actually being supported by National Youth Council, one of the department under like Singapore government. So we got a grant of 50K to run this initiative. So I really like the pointers about how they have the other speakers have been sharing about how we need to actually collaborate with others. At the same time, using LinkedIn as a platform to connect with like-minded individuals. So I feel that in order for us to actually be successful as an entrepreneur, right, we need to put ourselves out there to practice in terms of how to pitch our idea and all. It's okay to fail, but at least you know you have already done your best. You revise the idea and you can join the next incubation program again. Yeah, that's my 2 cents of thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the speakers who had shared their perspective and answering the questions from the chat box. Personally, myself, with humbly gratitude, also learned from these discussions. So since we are running out of time, I give the floor again to TJ. TJ, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lena. Thank you to the speakers. Very inspiring, very interesting conversations. You know, three things that came that I picked up through all these conversations. I think one would be the word conversation itself. Yeah. If you are aspiring to be an entrepreneur, you are an entrepreneur. If you're looking, you know, you're a startup, you are interested in innovation, I think it's always good to keep conversations going. And as an entrepreneur myself, every conversation that I've had, something interesting has come out of it. Because I go into the conversation wanting to learn, wanting to develop, wanting to, you know, innovate. Yeah. We cannot stay status quo. And therefore, we need to have that open mindset. Very, very important, especially in a pandemic. And if you look at post-pandemic, one size does not fit all. Your original game plan may not be the eventual. My original game plan was nowhere near what I'm doing today, but yet I'm here. So that is testament of the need for an open mindset. And like what Nora and a lot of the other speakers have said, really, it is about that continuous learning, whether it's technical, non-technical. For myself, I have started looking into e-commerce because I wanted to know what it's like. Not just being a buyer, but if I'm going to be a seller, I think it would be interesting to have a feel of what is it like on the other side of the fence. I think it's important. There was a question that was talking about mentoring. And I would say this, mentoring is a two-way street. If you are interested to be mentored, you will go look for people to mentor you. Do not wait for programs, because if you wait for programs, the sun will set. Go look for people that you can identify, that you can mentor, that are willing to share. I would dare say this panel here, there are already a few. Get connected to networks so that you can glean, you can learn, and you can grow. Because different regions, different stages of maturity as far as mentorship is concerned. So I would say if you're going to be an aspiring one, then be proactive. Entrepreneurship, there's no introvert, extrovert. There's just, are you willing to step forward? So thank you so much to all the questions, to all the interesting conversations that we've had this afternoon. It's really been a fantastic launch webinar, if I may say so. I would like to pass the floor to Julia to just close this session today.
Thank you very much, TJ. I see that maybe Adna, if that is the case, Adna, and you are with us and you want to add anything on your experience on incubators, this is the time. Anyway, maybe he's not. But so let me continue while waiting to see whether Adna is... Okay,
sorry,
great.
Dr. Julia. Apologies. I think a short word, a short scenario from me is to all those aspiring entrepreneurs. We know the journey is not easy. We know that it doesn't take a lesson or two for you to become an entrepreneur. But know this, I have been incubating a lot of students in my life. Some have managed to come up with nothing at all after 1 year. But there are some who has been working hard, resiliently, and they've actually come up with something. Now owns a few restaurants from nothing, from by just selling candy pops and everything. But after 2 years, owns 2 restaurants and actually serving the same university that he was actually coming from. What I'm trying to say is the journey is lonely. Only if you choose to make it lonely. But to be honest with you, everyone, the students and the student startups, you all have each other's back. The purpose of any government around the world is to create a platform. And just look at what ERIA is actually doing for all of us. Thank you, ERIA, for creating this platform. We hope this will be more sustainable. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adna. It was, let's say, a perfect almost conclusion. Very briefly, because we are running out of time, let me just say that TJ, Lina, myself, and many others, we suspected that we had found the perfect mix of speakers for our episode number 1. And now we can say that we were right, because we had a perfect introduction to the webinar series. We touched upon most of the topics that we want to discuss going forward. Something Adna has just mentioned and also before, which I think is absolutely crucial. When we talk about entrepreneurs, it's not just about people starting their own company. It's really about mindset, being entrepreneurial, seizing opportunities, being adaptable, and navigating complexity. So this is something absolutely key for us. We will continue discussing on this topic. And indeed, there was this question on mentoring. TJ has already replied. But be ready for episode number 2, because skills, mindsets, mentoring will be the topic for that episode. So fantastic, you see the flyer already. So connect with us again. But in addition to that, Jonathan mentioned inclusion, and also, the importance to make sure that technologies are benefiting all. This is very much something that we'll keep discussing. We'll keep discussing about the needs and the mindset of the younger, as TJ defined them. So youth, and what Veronica said, will accompany us throughout the entire series up to the end of the year. And also what Ravindra mentioned to us, such as ASEAN integration, what's happening across the region is other very important topics. Collaboration, many of you highlighted the issue that to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to be able to collaborate with others, learn when you discuss today. I personally learned a lot, and I would like to thank everybody for that. And also what Noor told us, her fantastic story about upskilling, reskilling, taking risks. So thank you so much to everybody. I hope that we will be able to continue this conversation and also stay in touch with you all for the future. Thank you very much. And I think now we can close the meeting.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.